Good morning. It's Lana here from the Schoolhouse for Art. We are back doing our Instagram lives. I've taken a little bit of a while to get these back in action, but I am delighted to be starting them again because I have such great conversations with some really, really fascinating people. And today I'm going to be joined by the wonderful John Dinan. And I can see John is here, so let me see, can I invite John in? I hope everyone's keeping well, managing to express their creativity, and I'm here in the Schoolhouse for Art today. There he is. Hey, how are you, John?
Hi, Lana. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. Never did this before, though.
I know. I seem to be catching people doing a lot of firsts. So, but don't worry. We are. I'll go easy on you. It's always a nice chat. We always have a nice conversation, though, John, don't we?
Yeah, of course we do. Offline.
Yeah. Well, this time we're just doing a face-to-face, and we'll pretend that no one else is listening.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm in. You're familiar with this room, so it's the life room, or the room in the main schoolhouse building in Enniskerry. Whereabouts are you?
Yeah.
You look like you're somewhere very important there.
Well, it's important to me anyway. It used to be an old cowshed, but it's now my studio. So I'm upstairs in a little mezzanine that we created when we bought the place.
Oh wow! I don't suppose you want to give us a little look around where your studio is, what it looks like.
Yeah, could do. Hold on, I'll have to just release this. Hold on a sec. Okay, so that's where I paint in the winter. That's what I'm currently painting. It's a painting of Roundstone on my easel. An old-fashioned look. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, can you?
Yeah, it's fab. Yeah, it's brilliant.
I've got skylights. Okay, and I've done a few online classes just as a test to see how they'd go, and this is my contraption that I use to do my online work.
Brilliant.
Okay, and then down at the other end, I have an etching press. I haven't done etching now for a couple of years, but I used to do quite a few etchings. That's my etching press. And I keep all my drawings, thousands of drawings that I've done over the years, in these drawers here. And over here, I have all the various workshops I run in all sorts of different folders. So, for instance, I don't know if you can see Plein Air Enniskerry.
You need to bring the camera down a tiny bit. I think we're looking up on the...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. There we are.
There we are. Okay. So, yeah, I keep a folder for all my workshops, and I even have all my flip chart material labeled by workshop.
You're very organized, John. I love it.
I was up all night tidying before this session.
I'm sure you weren't. You come across as a very organized person.
It's all a sham. It's all a pretend. It's fake news.
No, I know. Like, what's fascinating, anytime I've spoken to you, I learn a little bit more. Like, even when we were chatting about today, and I was saying about using the camera, and you said, sure, I was a cameraman for the BBC before. And I was like, oh, well, there's something new.
Yeah.
And then,
yeah.
And then saying, you know, about how you came to be a teacher for art. And you said, well, I did it for business people for years. So you seem to have like kind of had a really practical segues to get you where you are today, because you've made some amazing choices in terms of keeping being able to even have a professional career as an artist, but then you've many layers to that as well. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about kind of how you've gotten to where you are now in your career?
Yeah, I'll probably make it sound very planned, but I suppose when I was growing up, you weren't encouraged to think to be an artist as a profession.
Mhm.
Long time ago now, but I was okay in school, so I did engineering in college and became an electrical engineer. So that taught me all sorts of logic and processes, basically. Engineering is basically about problem solving. So I practiced engineering. As I said to you earlier, I said the first job I had was an engineer in the BBC in London because I wanted to get out of Ireland just to experience something different. And they shoved me in front of a live camera, or behind a live camera, I should say, not in front of it. And so,
Trusted you straight away, though. That's a
yeah,
big.
we were on BBC News, so the news is live. So
Wow.
I had to operate two different cameras. So I'd be jumping behind the scenes from one to another because it was sort of pre-digital. So, everything, photographs were actually pinned up basically on a wall, and you had to move your camera, when you were on the cameraman and all sorts of things like that. But anyway, yeah. So after a while, though, I was fascinated by the whole business idea, and I didn't know anything about business, so I tried to join into a business consultancy, and then I joined a training organization for 10 years. So I learned all about the mechanics of teaching and training people. And I then moved into the Irish Management Institute for another 10, 12 years. And I started teaching sessions in the IMI, although that wasn't my main job. And then I set up a consultancy company of my own. And a lot of that was to do with teaching. So I was teaching supervisors, I was teaching management teams, developing management development programs for them. So I did a lot of design of teaching programs. So that stood to me when I started teaching workshops much later.
But so having such a kind of a stable or more mainstream career at that point, and I know that you did evening classes with NCAD while you were working as an engineer. But so how did you decide, to make like what seems like a risk to go from that kind of steady income to becoming a professional artist? Was that like an overnight, this is something I need to do? Was it a very thought out, process? Or how was it for you to kind of become, to do what you're so passionate about doing? And you said it's a lifelong dream fulfilled, doing what you're doing now. It can't have been an easy decision, or was it?
No, it wasn't an easy decision, but it was also a sort of planned decision in a way. Even from primary school days, I don't know why, there was no huge home influence about encouraging me to draw or paint. Again, that wasn't done at that time.
No.
Your parents basically left you to grow up on your own in a most loving family, I have to say. But there was no pressure to either do art or not do art. But
Okay.
I wasn't encouraged to take up art as a career, although I was very interested in it, and also architecture. I finally plumped on engineering for some reasons. Anyway, I was influenced by a brother-in-law at the time, and I've no regrets about it. But I set up an art group in Portmarnock in my mid-20s when I had come back from London, and I joined the late Henry Healy as a tutor, and I asked him to teach that Portmarnock art group. And it's still running today, about, 40 years later, which I'm very pleased about. And I sometimes give them demonstrations and things if they invite me down. And so I was always keen on becoming a painter, and in my later life I felt that's what I really wanted to do. And when the 3 kids were grown up and gone through college or whatever they wanted to do, I felt I've done enough business. I really now want to do what I always wanted to do. So that was around the age of 50, and I told the clients that I had in my own business consultancy that I had a major project. I had to work with a brand new client. It was a bit of a lie, a bit of a fib, but I said I'm going to have to work for them full time for the next 6 months. And they all understood because I worked long term with my clients. And I said if they need to contact me about anything urgent, of course I'm available, but I won't be able to visit them unless it's really important. So I was going to test whether I could switch almost overnight from working on my own in a quiet situation painting, from working almost every day with groups of people in lots of different companies, from engineering companies to mining companies to electronics companies to international pharmaceutical companies. So it was a huge change. So I had to test it. So I tested it for 6 months and I absolutely loved it. But the other thing I tested so that it wasn't such, when people say it was a very brave decision, it wasn't really brave because I had been selling art that I painted in my part-time, in my weekends and on my annual holidays from work. I'd be painting and I put them into 1 or 2 galleries and I knew that I could sell paintings. They were selling reasonably well. And so it wasn't a huge risk in that sense. I just thought if I could multiply 2 galleries up to say 10 galleries, I could earn enough money. And I just didn't want to pass into the next world or wherever we go without having tested my art and pushed it to learn as much as I could. So that was the basis of it. And after 6 months, I was still selling work. I was learning a little bit. I thought it would take about 5 years at least to get up to a really good level. And that's not being modest. I really felt, I should have said it would take at least 20 years. I know, not really, but certainly 5 years of full-time work. I felt I was getting there.
But so then you must have been quite disciplined to keep up art practice while you had your career, your previous career. Is that, you know, if you were still managing to keep some time together for, you know, for doing art in the evenings and the weekends, enough to be able to go ahead and do, you know, be selling work and everything?
Yeah, I probably was. I'm probably pretty narrow-minded in terms of my focus and my reading and my studies. I would have gone to several NCAD, National College of Art and Design courses in Dublin in the evenings. I also joined a group through Henry Healy, a group of seriously inclined painters called the Back Lane Painters, because Back Lane in Dublin is where Henry Healy used to teach, or very close to it. He actually ran it in Francis Street in the Coombe, but right around the corner is Back Lane, which is a very street where Ireland's first parliament was held back, I think, in the 18th century. But I used to go every year for 1 or 2 weeks of my summer holidays. I'd only be able to take 1 week. And I paint somewhere with the Back Lane Painters. And Henry died a couple of years after I joined that group. But we've been together now for over 40 years. It's not too many of them left, unfortunately. I was pretty much the youngest to join. But they taught me more than anybody and encouraged me. So I was very much involved in a milieu of art.
And do you find that your discipline, you know, if you were giving advice to other artists, because I know creative block, I know a lot of artists have kind of put art to one side and then come back to it years later. Do you find like discipline or confidence or just being okay to fail? What kind of advice would you give to artists in terms of how to keep the momentum going?
Yeah, I often think of Jack Nicklaus's famous expression that the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Okay. Well, that's a good one.
And it applies. And certainly I would have noticed over the years that, you know, in the winter months, November to even now, February, you're not quite as keyed into being creative. I love plein air painting. Most of my work I will do landscape painting, and I just love to be outdoors painting. And it's difficult to do that in the winter time for practical reasons. So I try and maybe switch to still life painting in the winter, or if I have any commissioned portraits, I'll do those. So I've pushed myself to learn the different genres, and I find that fascinating. I just think it's a lifelong learning. You're never finished learning as an artist, and that's what really attracted me years and years ago, decades ago, that I thought if I live to 90 or 100 and I'm mentally okay and physically okay, I'm still going to be learning. It's going to give me a reason to get up in the morning.
And because when even from looking at your work and from reading more about you and from our conversations, you don't necessarily say that you have a style.
That's
Would
correct.
that be fair to say? Because some artists really, you know, they make a living on a particular style. If you see a particular painting, you'll say, well, that is such and such, I know who that is. And there's definite paintings that you can see it's a John Dinan piece, but then you have other angles to your work. Is that part of the learning process? Do you enjoy kind of experimenting with new things?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I admire people who do really well with a particular recognizable style, but to be honest, you don't really go into art to make a lot of money. I could have made a lot more money if I stayed in my own consultancy business. But on that, yeah, so in terms of the styles, it's about learning as much as you can about it. And, you know, I'm messing around at the moment with looking at some abstract type work.
Okay.
I wouldn't show it to you because it's so bad. But
No.
yeah, so it's always a learning thing, and that's me anyway. Other people are content, and rightly so, to develop a natural style, because your first objective really is to be able to earn enough money to be a full-time painter. I mean, if you can't, then you're going to fall away from it maybe. But
yeah, it becomes too risky or
yeah,
too,
it does.
yeah.
The risks are there as well. Just moving slightly, segueing over to the financial side. I was lucky that I went full time into painting in 2000, the second half of the year 2000.
Okay.
First 7 years, to be honest now, and I'm not bragging, I couldn't keep up with the 10 or 12 galleries I had. They were ringing me every second month and sending me checks. I couldn't believe it, and I was doing fantastically. And then suddenly, in 2007, 2008, the world collapsed, recession hit. And suddenly I was faced with a problem that, like almost every artist who's honest, would say that their sales dropped by about 70 or 80%. Because if they're not building hotels, if they're not building houses, there's nowhere to hang paintings, and you're still painting. So I had to apply my own consultancy ideas and experience to my own now business as an artist. And so I had been experimenting a little before that with the odd workshop, because I enjoy teaching. I love teaching and sharing my insights and experience. So I just had to fairly obviously increase the workshops. So I was able to, instead of being doing, say, 90% painting and 10% workshops over a year, I then switched around to maybe 70% workshops and 30% painting. And that helped to balance out the problem, because the workshops proved, I mean, I had to work really hard at marketing it and developing it and building up a database of names and people interested, but they seemed to go pretty well. I got a lot of repeats, and that was able to balance out the, so we got through the recession. But I did need the money. I mean, I didn't have any, being honest, I didn't have any cash saved from my business. It was just simply, I was an artist. That's the truth of it.
Yeah, it's a very scary time when that happens. But I know in terms of your workshops, you've been coming here to the Schoolhouse for art for years, and you know, we're delighted to have you. And I think one of the things that separates what you do to some of our other workshops is how inclusive it can be. So, you know, you have How Colour Works is one of the ones that's coming up, and then it's you know, finishing your impact, mastering composition. They're the three different workshops that we have coming up, and you're really picking a regular obstacle that people will face, that artists will face throughout their painting process, and you're giving them these 3 days to just you know, let them really focus in on those issues and help break them down. And I assume that from your IMI days and your training days, that that's what really stands to you in terms of making these workshops so successful?
Well, I suppose it's also from what I discovered was the hardest things for myself. I mean, color. Color is, I have always found color the most challenging thing. I was lucky enough to be reasonably good at drawing, so I didn't have a problem with capturing likenesses of villages, landscapes, or portraits. But color was something that was totally new, and it's a fascinating subject, and I've studied it an awful lot. And I wanted to share that learning with people because, as I say at the start of that workshop, every stroke of paint, every single stroke of paint that you put down, a single stroke, has at least 3 totally different characteristics. It has the color of that color, like green. It has how dark or light is the green, which is the tone of it. And it has the brightness or dullness of that color. Is it a bright green or a dull green? And you have to mix that up with every single stroke of paint. And that's what makes it so challenging. So that's what that workshop is about. And also sharing color schemes, color plans based on the color wheel to sort of simplify the way you think about color. And by simplifying it, you actually make your paintings more successful.
And do you feel like there needs to be a certain skill level for people to come to your workshops, or do you think it's, you know, if it's somebody who's has put the paintbrush down 20 years ago and really wants to try and get back into it, or is it, you know, if you're a regular painter and you just you're just hitting this kind of color block, how who do you think should be, who do you regularly get? What kind of artists come?
Okay, I get all sorts of every level come to my courses, and I spend most of the time on the course, on the workshops, are advising people one-to-one. I normally would do a session of maybe 3/4 of an hour at the start to share some insight so that they'd have something to base their practical work on. But they basically work away for most of the workshops, trying to put into practice those things. But the color course is suitable for every level, because I build it up step by step. That's probably the engineering side of me coming in. I sort of understand where people are coming from, and I start without any assumptions at all. So even beginners can understand that. In fact, sometimes it might short circuit their development if they didn't have any knowledge, because after a bit of practice you get used to certain colors and it might be harder for them. But no, all the courses are suitable for every level, but I get semi-professional artists, professional artists on it, and I'll tune in my one-to-one advice to suit what I see them doing, and when they tell me what problems they have, I sort of respond one-to-one.
Yeah, it's great having that, you know, the sort of workshop where you're really dedicating that time to a particular element of painting. It's not you're coming in and this is how I paint and this is what you'll come away at the end of it. It's really kind of, it's troubleshooting. It's helping people really hone in on certain skills, which is just so helpful to, you know, to be able, the fact that you've been able to identify it in your own work and then translate it in a way that can be taught and shared with other people, I think is a great skill.
Yeah, well, the courses I'd run courses apart from the Schoolhouse. I'd run a few of my own in the west of Ireland. I've run some over in different parts of Europe as well over the years, and some of those are more painting holidays. I'll still share a lot of information with them, but the workshops in Enniskerry, I'm really interested in a new one that I'm running, which is called Mastering Composition and Design, because that's the hidden side of a successful painting. It's like the construction of a house. If a house is being built, it looks ugly and there's concrete and all sorts of things, but you don't see any of those when the house is finished. You see the decoration and the lovely furniture and that. And I want to share with people because it was a big insight for me and a big improvement in my own paintings when I realized that there's a whole abstract quality to design and composition And the word abstract tends to frighten a lot of people, but there's nothing to be at all. And, you know, I'll share, like I have, I don't know if you can see these sort of drawings here.
Yes.
These are what I call thumbnail sketches.
Fab. Oh, I recognize. Do I recognize some of them? Have some of them been? Are they the one? Yeah.
It might be. You might have. That's yeah.
I did my research, John. I did my research.
Hey, I have a huge amount of stuff on composition and design. There's the folder I have that I'm preparing at the moment for the workshop, and it's full. But I mean, I'll condense that into manageable chunks for the people. But I had a real aha experience when I realized the abstract nature of work. And I mean, I'm actually working on this year. Behind me, you might see loads of paintings side by side. They're all French pictures because I paint a lot in France. And I was looking over the last week or two, really old paintings I did 20, 30 years ago. And I realized I had no idea about composition and design in terms of the abstract nature of composition and design. And so I'm taking them out and I'm reworking them, and I'm having great fun doing that over the last week or two. So I'm going to share that with people on that particular course.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that I guess the fact that you've so many years selling into galleries, running your own exhibitions, and commissions, that you've a great understanding of what sells and how to sell your art. Because the last workshop you're doing with us before, you know, for the moment anyway, is the finishing your painting with impact, which again, so many artists have those 4 or 5 paintings that just something isn't right, and you encourage them to then bring along those pieces to this particular workshop to help figure out how to finish that piece. Yeah, was that another aha moment where you realized that this was a real struggle for some artists?
It was, because I'm not going to try and gild the lily at all. Every artist takes back a lot of work from galleries that they thought at the time were worth framing and spending money. I mean, sometimes I think my life is dedicated to keeping framers in business as against keeping myself. But when I take back my work, I'd look at it and say, why did that not sell? I liked it. But then I really had to become more and more objective. And I started studying the whole thing about really bringing your pictures up to absolute exhibition standard. And to me, when I paint out outdoors on plein air, I can maybe capture the essence of a 20 by 16 painting in maybe 2 to 3 hours. I capture the essence of it. But I bring it back and I look at it and I say nowadays, it's not of exhibition standard. There's things I need to do. And I began to note a whole range of things about finishing a painting. So I might have done that in 2 to 3 hours, but I might take 10 hours to finish it. And I thought that studio-based aspect of finishing outdoor work was worthy of sharing with other people. Because I'm probably very typical as an artist to anyone else, you know. So we want to try and improve our hit rate in terms of sales. So, and also the pleasure out of finishing a picture up to the highest possible level. So they're the sort of things I share on that course. And so artists bring 4 or 5 or 6 of their unfinished work, or even work they think is finished, even framed work. And against the framework that I share on the workshop, they're able to look at their own work and make decisions about improving them.
So really is having a critical, like being able to have that critical eye over your own work, and, you know, taking that feedback and turning it into then a finished painting, especially if you have a process to it.
Yeah, I have. And so they're the sort of little checklists and guidelines I give them. I mean, they are only guidelines ultimately, because you know, everyone will have their own way of finishing a picture, but the guidelines are helpful to them, because in your own studio you don't really have anyone to consult with. I don't have anyone to ask, what do you think of this or that? I live out in a quiet part of County Mayo now, having moved 20 years ago from Dublin, and so you have to have a basic checklist, and you have to be brave about finishing your work. Like, even at a late stage in work, I will change some of the major shapes in it, or even change the color scheme, or change the tonality of a picture. And so they're the sort of things I share, and give people insights into how to do that, and show examples. Like, if you compare the darkness of a Rembrandt painting, a typical Rembrandt painting, with the lightness of a Monet painting, why did they do that? So we look at the mood of a picture and the color harmony that reflects that mood, and so on.
It's great, and kind of what comes to my mind when you know, when you talk about the different processes, is it must be a great help to overcoming any creative block that you hear a lot of artists talk about, that if you know that there's a process that works and you follow the process, is that something that kind of helps you overcome, or do you experience creative block?
Oh, well, I think we all, you know, being honest again, we all get creative blocks at times. I mentioned that earlier, especially in winter time. So I'll try and get to the easel no matter what for a few hours every day, and work at that. You've also got to work at your own health as well. Keep yourself reasonably fit and get out for walks and so on. It's about a whole of life experience. And you know, you need to do something apart from art as well. Like, I mess around with woodwork, just for terrible woodwork, very simple, but I enjoy mucking around with it. I'm a great supporter of Aldi and Lidl for their various woodworking.
For their special buys.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
But in terms of overcoming obstacles, one of the challenges of outdoor painting is you've generally got to, especially in Ireland, you've got to paint pretty quickly, because things change. Maybe every 2 hours, roughly, the light has moved from one part of the buildings and things to another. So you need a process. You need to have a logical process. And so I share 6 steps to great painting in my outdoor workshops. And it helps me, because I don't move to the next stage until I have the first stage sorted out. For instance, the first stage is, why do you want to paint that particular view? Sometimes people just set up in front of a view and they start painting everything. But you need to decide exactly what you want to paint, because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Oh, I like it, John. Well, we're really looking forward to having you over this side of the country in a couple of weeks' time. So I know I guess if anybody is wondering, we have your How Colour Works workshop, which is a 3-day workshop then at the end of the month. We have Mastering Composition and Design then in the middle of April, in April, and then later on in April we have How to Finish Your Painting. So we'll have you over. We'll be seeing a lot more of you over the next couple of weeks. Yeah, I can't wait. And thanks so much. I'm going to let you go, because I've kept you for so long. I'm delighted. Loads of people have been listening for our live, and I'll put the recording then onto our Instagram page. But I hope it wasn't as scary as you might have thought. It was a great chat.
Thanks, Lana, and thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate it. If there's any questions that people want answered, I'll try and answer them, and you can tell me how to do that, because I'm not too familiar.
I will. Okay. I will. Thanks so much, John. I'll chat to you soon, and thanks everyone for listening.
Bye-bye.
See you, John. Take care. Bye-bye.